It's testing. I guess we'll just let it. It should just stay, but we'll see.
Well, let's see. We got it going again.
Do you want me to wash? You want me to wash this? That'd be good to wash.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. That. I'm back recording again. Let's see here. It just went dark there all of a sudden. I'm doing this on, I think they call this thing an iPad. I don't know. I've been out of electronics now for several years, probably 28. I retired from IBM about 28 years ago. I worked there 30 years fixing computers, but they weren't anything like they are today. I'll tell you, I got a lot more to say about that later, but we won't. I got other things to talk about. I'm trying to get started here, and it's kind of difficult to get started, because I'm gonna be jumping around all over the place. It ain't gonna be like It ain't gonna be one of these sophisticated books where these PhDs write them and everything is in order, and boy, you start out and a little bit of information and it gets more and more information, and then at the very end of the thing they give the punchline. This ain't gonna be one of them. This is just gonna be from the average old Joe, a guy that brought up on a dairy farm. I thought the world was a nice place until I got out in it, but you know, I'm trying to get the hang of talking to this iPad thing. I think they call it. It's quite a piece of invention. My goodness. Of course, you young people see this stuff. You think this has probably been here airways. I didn't even see my first TV till I was 15 years old. World War II was over. I missed World War II by about 3 years. I was 15 when the war ended. I remember when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. I know where I was. Of course, everybody does, I guess, that was alive at the time. But I don't know. I just wanted to. The reason I'm doing this, I may have said this before. I can't remember what I've said and what I ain't said. But the reason I'm doing this is the last year or two, I've been laid up. I got to where, even after I lost my leg about 7, 8 years ago, right leg, I could still drive an automobile. And I learned, my son put the gas pedal from the right-hand side of the brake to the left-hand side, so I drove the car using my left foot. I got a lot to say about that you get a kick out of. Well, I'll go ahead and tell you. When I first started trying to drive my car using my left foot, boy, I'm telling you, when you stop at a red light or a stop sign, I'd burn rubber for 30 yards. That's not easy to learn how to just barely touch the foot feed, to start off real slow. It took me about 6 months before I got the hang of that. Boy, that was something. But I finally mastered it. And for close to, I guess, about 6.5, 7 years, I was able to drive my car and my truck. And when I drove my truck, I could, when I was driving my truck, I could take care of myself. You know, I owned my home. I didn't have much of a home, but it was, I lived in it. It was satisfied me, you know. I never wanted much too big of a thing. But anyway, when it got to the point where when I got to be about 83 years old, near 82 and a half to 83 years old, I started, when I drive my truck, I started making mistakes. When I'd come up to a red light or something, the light would turn red. I thought I could make it, and it would turn red. Boy, I couldn't remember what to do. I started hesitating. I was trying to use my right foot. Of course, I ain't got no right foot. And I was I had to realize that I had to use my left foot, you know. And did that 2 or 3 times. And I told my son, I said, I got to quit driving. I'm going to kill somebody. Said, I don't want to do that, you know. That's awful hard. That's a big decision somebody's make. Because as soon as I quit driving my truck, I can't take care of myself nowhere. So I had to make the decision that I was going to give up trying to take care of myself. And that's tough. Boy, that is really tough, since I've taken care of myself all my life. But I didn't want to kill nobody. So I gave that up, and I moved into one of these, I don't know what you call these things. I call them the old folks home, but I think they got, everything nowadays has got a terminology on it where they try to make it acceptable. It's not an old folks home. It's a retired place or some baloney. Anyway, I didn't. When you go into one of those places, I'm gonna give you a little clue here. You better realize you're gonna have to give up your independence, because these people that work in that place, they're gonna treat you like you ain't got any sense at all, and they're gonna dominate you to the extent that you don't get a chance to make any decisions for yourself. They make them for you, and if they don't like you, they can treat you any way they want to. And I didn't get along too well in there, because I'm a very independent person, or I had been up until that time. And I decided that I had taken enough off of them. We got into some real bad arguments, and I could tell you, well, heck, I'll just tell you what happened. They had one of the ladies that. See, there was nothing wrong with me. I was at the time I was in a wheelchair. I now walk with a stroller, but when I was in that place, I had a wheelchair that I got myself around in. And one of these people that work in that place, they seemed to take it upon themselves that there wasn't anything wrong with me going around the halls. I would get out in my wheelchair and I would run it around to try to look at the place, and you get out, you go around, see what's going on some places. I mean, I got tired of sitting in one room all the time. Well, this one lady decided that I didn't have the right to do that. So every time I'd get out there, she'd come running over saying, "What are you doing out here? What do you want?" And I told her one day, I'm just going to tell you what I told her. I said, "It ain't none of your damn business what I'm doing out here, and get out of my face, Well, that ended my stay at that place. Boy, I mean, every one of those guards in there, I call them guards, but they're supposed to be taking care of old folks. Every one of them got on my case. And boy, I'm telling you, it's like, I got to where I'd stay in my room. I wouldn't come out of it because I didn't want to argue with the darn people, and they wasn't going to tell me what to do, But it turned out that it didn't work out too well. When you argue with one of those people, you can just forget about staying there. The only time I'd come out of my room is when I'd go up to eat. And when I'd go up to eat, like if breakfast was pretty good, because they didn't give, they just come out and give you your breakfast. And usually when you got there, the knife and forks and spoon was wrapped up in a napkin and laying on your table. Well, that breakfast was okay, but then when it would come dinner time wasn't too bad sometimes, but supper time was the one that would have trouble with. Now, when I say breakfast, dinner, and supper, I'm talking about 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. See? Now, I don't know about the rest of the world is that way or not. I have no idea, and I don't care. It's always going to be that way with me, regardless of what the etiquette is. But anyway, what happened was that they got to where that they wouldn't put knife and forks on my table. And then when they would serve salad, they'd serve it to there wasn't but 15 people in there counting me. But they would serve salad if they had a salad that was with the meal, They would serve it to everybody else, but they wouldn't give me one. Plus, they wouldn't put knife and forks on my table. So, they were getting even with me, boy. There wasn't going to be no back talk to them. So, this about the second time they did that, I threw a fit. And I just about, in no uncertain terms, told them where all they could head to. The down under place, the Hades places. I told them where they could all go. And I had my son to come get me, and that ended my stay in that hellhole, And I got to tell you, folks, you're gonna get old if you're able to listen to this. I don't know how old you are now, but I don't give a damn if you ain't but 5 years old. You're going to get old someday. See, I'm staring death in the face. I'm only a few years away from it. I'm already over the average. But if you think for 1 minute at these places where they send old people, now, there's some people get along real well in there. Some of them don't have no trouble. They don't mind being told what to do. They don't mind being somebody leading them around with a string. But if you're any kind of a person that take care of yourself all your life, and you've lived you've decided what you want to do and what you don't want to do, you don't want to go one of them places. Because I'm going to tell you, you're in for a lot of trouble. But let's get off of that for a while. And I forgot what I was talking about here. I just had to put that in there because you people need to know what goes on in these places like that. They put all these propaganda stuff in these magazines. Come here, we got this place where you can be, boy, this old folks home, this is where you need to be. Boy, we take care of you. This is just a wonderful place. That's a bunch of hooey. Plus the fact it's expensive as the devil. Ain't many of you folks going to be able to fit it. If you got $5,000 a month that you could give somebody, well, lots of luck to you. But there ain't going to be many of you folks going to wind up $5,000 a month. And the type of place that I was in, you ain't going to be able to afford. They're going to put you in one of these places like I saw my brother-in-law in. It was a place, he shared a room with another person. There was two of them, only had a curtain between them. And he didn't have any furniture. He didn't have anything. He had no privacy. And I don't know what he paid. I didn't ask him. But I'm going to tell you right now that you better, I don't know what, something needs to be done about this old folks business. Of course, most of you living today that are young probably ain't going to get old because the government's trying their best to get rid of you. They got this stuff, they got a name for it, I forget what it is. It's called, let me see, they got a name for this stuff that they trying to get rid of people. There's too many people in the world. The government wants to get rid of you, and they're going to do their best to do it. And this Obama care crap is probably going to get rid of me, But anyway, I still want, that's another reason I want to tell this story before they get rid of all the folks that knew. So I was around, and in my own opinion, I think I've lived during the times when this country give the best that it ever had to its citizens. I mean, I lived in the best times that the United States of America ever gave to its citizens. I didn't know that there was evil in government until I was in my damn near 80s, Now I see evil everywhere, and I feel sorry for you people. I really do. But I had a wonderful life, back when things where people were considered to be human beings. Now you just a number, I feel sorry for you, I really do. But because I don't know what this world's coming to. I mean, it's nothing like it was when I was young. But I need to go back and start all over again and get off of the subject I'm on now. I got a lot more to say about it, but just there ain't gonna be no end to what I'm saying here. The only way I'll quit is when I die, I guess, because I got so much to say. That things are so different now than they was when I grew up. It just, See, I try to think back and think of the first thing that I can ever remember. You know, you're born, and I don't think you know what's going on. You know, you're just a baby up until you're 4 or 5 years old. I don't know how old I was, but I kept thinking that there was one thing that I remember seeing. When I went out in the backyard of my house, there was a big old black pot, and fire was going underneath it, and the outside of the pot was all smutted up and rough, and looked like it'd been a lot of, it looked like scales and stuff on it, but on the inside it was black. The whole thing was real black. On the inside was black, but it was kind of shiny black, and down in the bottom of it was some white stuff. And what comes to mind when I see that is that was some soap that was made out of a hog that you slaughter. And of course, even though I had a unique situation, really, it's kind of hard to explain to somebody that this was called lye soap. That somebody was making some lye soap. You know, that's one of the first things I remember. That's not the earliest one. I remember one that was even in the early. I would have had to been walking to have seen that. You know, and I remember back before I even walked. I remember sitting on the floor underneath. Look, well, I know what it is now. You know, I can look back. At the time, I probably didn't know what it was, but I was sitting on the floor looking. When I looked up, I was at the bottom of a quilt, and I saw legs, women's legs around this square quilt thing there, and I know from later on that was a quilting party that my mother probably and my grandmother and my grandmother had 2 daughters. My mother had a sister, actually had 3, but the oldest one was named Olga. She died. And then it was Helen, which was the youngest sister of my mother, which her name was Georgina Elfrida Peterson. I always thought that Georgina was the prettiest name. I don't know why. Everybody called my mother Elfrida, but I always thought that Georgina was a prettier name. But, you know, that's beside the point. But anyway, that being, I had to have been in diapers. That's why they had me underneath that quilt. And I couldn't crawl out because there was legs and chairs everywhere, so I couldn't get in trouble. I couldn't crawl nowhere. So that's got to be the first thing that I ever remember. It has to be. And anyway, I wanted to go and start this thing at the very beginning, even though I've talked here for a while, and I don't know, it's just. But I'm going to tell you everything that happened to it. There ain't going to be no end to this story, you know. I think they call these things autobiography. I might have said that once, but you'd have to bear with me because I can't remember what I said and what I hadn't said, and I may say things several times, but I don't really care, you know. The reason I'm doing this is when I watch Netflix and I watch TV and I watch shows, and boy, they have these family get-togethers, and sometimes there's 15 or 20 people there. And I think, my gosh, you know, I don't. We never had one of them. In fact, I know the names of a lot of my kinfolks, but I only met them maybe once or twice. Some of them I don't know that I ever met at all. I know my mother. If you think about her, my mother's father, which would be my grandfather on my mother's side, he died before I was born, so I never knew him. I never even heard anything. I was named after him, you know. My first name's John, and his name was Johann, and my grandmother on my mother's side used to call me Jan Jr., or at least, now I don't remember that, but that's what I heard the older folks say about it, that my grandmother on my mother's side called me Jan Jr. because I was named after her husband, which would have been my grandfather, of course. But anyway, getting back to said my grandmother, I remember her. Tell you the truth, your mind, my mind is doing something right now that I don't feel that they'll ever be able to make a computer do. You know, even though they say they're going to make a computer take over. Now, I'll admit that a computer can remember things a lot more, you know, and whatever than the average person can. They can put stores and stores of information in it, but there ain't no way in the world that that computer is ever going to think back when it was first built and while it was being built. They're going to be able to, that computer is going to be able to think, well, I remember when old Yahoo there, he put this part here together and he added this in. And boy, I remember when they put my memory in there and I started remembering things. You know, that ain't going to happen, you know. What I'm doing when I go back and think about things like that is what a computer will never be able to do, you know. See, I worked on computers. That's another story. I have a unique life. I want to tell you. I don't mean to, when I say that God used me throughout my life. Let me explain something. I'm not trying to tell you that I was special. God uses just about any and everybody that He wants to. You know. Now, if He uses you and you may not even know it. The reason I know it, the reason I realize it is because it was so blatant. I mean, I could tell you things that I did that was, my goodness, no way in the world I should have been able to do something like that, you know, or should have. But anyway, I'll get back to the story when I was a little baby. I'm trying to remember back the first things I remember. I'm gonna jump back and forth. I may talk about something I remember when I was 5 years old, and the next minute maybe 84 years old. I don't know. This ain't going to be one of them Shakespeare type books where everything's chronological in order and everybody builds up to the last chapter when the whodunit is talked about, you know. This is just going to be a life story for a person that's telling his personal life. You know, what can I say? It's been a real beautiful ride, and I really feel sorry for you folks that are being born nowadays and have to live in this world like it is, you know. Of course, if you folks out there that don't pay any attention to government, you probably don't know all the evil that's going on. But if you get a chance like I've had in the last 6 months or so, a year, to sit back and watch the TV and watch the stuff that's going on, and you realize, my goodness, boy, they are just, the whole thing is propaganda. The whole thing is set up to entice you to believe something that's not true, you know, and they're just piling on you, you know. I don't know what the world's going to be like in another 50 years. I'm not even sure it'll be here. I'm not one of these Armageddon type Christians that thinks the world's going to, you know, come to an end because it's getting so rotten. You know, I don't know. You know, I don't know what's going to take place. I'm not a prosper or whatever you call them, people that prosper things. I'm not one of them. I just live it as it comes, you know. Of course, I don't know if anybody stayed with me long enough to listen to what I got to say. I really don't care whether you do or not. I just want to put it down for posterity, you know. I'm gonna hopefully, when I get through here, God, I don't know how long this is gonna take. It's gonna take forever, I guess. I'll just do it a little at a time, and then try as things. I may talk about the same thing several times. I don't know throughout, because I forget what I've talked about and what I hadn't talked about a lot. And you know, it ain't gonna be one of these. It ain't gonna be one of these sophisticated things where all the spelling's correct and the punctuation's correct, and boy, the periods and the commas and the exclamation points and the question mark, all those are just perfect, man. I mean, gosh, they got. Excuse me, I had to cough. But if you read one of these books, I've read several books. I never read but 2 books in my whole life up until well, I take that back. I read one when I was in grade school, one when I was in college, and I read about 3 when I was about 35 years old about astronomy. But those was 1, 2, and those 5 books is all I probably read up until I got to where I couldn't work no more. You know, I lost my leg and especially when I sold my house and got to where I couldn't drive my car no more to take care of myself. So all I could do is sit around and watch TV, you know. But I'm not the type of person that goes over in a corner and sucks my thumb just because I lost my leg, you know. I'm not a. If something happens to me, I try to make the best of it. So I haven't curled up in a corner and gotten mad because I lost my leg, and my mind has got to where I can't drive my truck no more. So I just make the best of whatever there is, and I'm not unhappy, you know. My gosh, I'm actually a lot luckier than a lot of you folks. I'll tell you that, because I lived through the best times this country ever gives this citizen. Even though I didn't make a ton of money and lived in the fanciest home in town and drove the Cadillacs and the Mercedes and all that, I just had an old car. In fact, I worked on my own cars. I never put a car in a shop except one time. I had that. I found out I've overhauled 3 or 4 motors, but I never could fix an automatic transmission. I got to take my hat off and salute somebody that can fix an automatic transmission. That is tough. I can put all the parts in them. I put all the parts in a couple of them, but boy, I tell you, when I put them back in the car, I took one out. I'll bet you 5, 6 times trying to adjust that thing where I can make it shift gears. I get them to where they would work, but I'd have to gun the motor and then let my foot off the gas, and bam, boy, it would jerk into second gear. Then I'd have to gun the motor again and take my foot off the gas, and bam, it'd go into third gear. And I'd say, well, you know, take it out again. About the 3rd or 4th time I took it out, I give up. I just drove it like that. I said, but I never pulled it. That was about the second one that I tried to fix, and both of them did the same thing. So I decided that I wasn't going to be able to fix an automatic transmission unless I went to school and learned how, you know. So I give up trying to fix them. It ain't that often that you have trouble with an automatic transmission, but I give up. But I've overhauled several motors, you know, 3 or 4. Ain't nothing to all overhauling overhauling an engine. You know, you have it, because I have it bored out. I didn't bore the thing out myself. I'd take everything off of it and take it to a shop somewhere and have them bored out, and then I'd buy the pistons to go with the bore, whatever size they bored it out to. I'd go buy the pistons for that size and the rings, and then you know, you got your okay, my mind's gone again here. I'm trying to think of the things that go down on the camshaft, you know, the bearings, the things, and you have to buy those new bearings for it, because I'd have the camshaft turned and everything. So I put it back together. I've overhauled a couple of engines, boy. They're really nice, you know. I do that pretty good. 2 or 3 of them I've overhauled. I had it all set up in the garage where I could haul that motor out. I could lift it out of the car, put it down on the ground and work on it, you know, take it all apart, put it back together with all new parts and everything. But I'm off onto something now other than what I really started out to be. But I'll get back to this first thing that I ever saw in my life that I can remember, and that was sitting underneath that quilting party that my mother had. And, you know, you go from there, and then I kind of, you know, it's like I think I mentioned already that I had seen people where they had family get-togethers. Gosh, and sometimes there'd be 15 or 20 people in those pictures, and I say, my goodness, we never had one of them. I can't remember ever seeing my mother. I know Helen. I remember seeing her. I saw her more than I saw anybody else. Of course, my mother's oldest sister, I think I might have said her name was Olga, but I think it also was Gunderson or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, her brothers, I remember their names. You know, there was there was Pete. Pardon me, there was Pete, which I think was the oldest of my mother's brother, and he had a busted bottom lip, but I don't remember ever seeing him but maybe once or twice. And I don't know where he worked or where he lived or anything, or where he went to, or nothing about him and his family. I think it was Pete and Maggie, I believe. I don't even remember seeing his wife, but I remember hearing them people talk about Pete and Maggie. Now that may or may not be true, I don't know. Then there was another one called Conrad, and I don't know the name of his wife, but he had a son. Conrad had a son about the same age as my sister, and I don't know whatever happened to him. I don't remember whatever happened to Conrad, you know. And then there was another brother called Oscar. He's the only one of the people of my sister's brothers that I ever really had anything to do with, and that was only because when I joined the Marine Corps, I'll talk about that later, I went to California, and I think somebody told me that Chris was living in, I think it was either San Francisco or across the bay over there at that other town. And God, my mind just, you're going to have to bear with me here because there's a town across the bay there. My gosh, I would have known it any other time. But anyway, he lived in, I believe Oscar lived in San Francisco. I'm not sure, but I went to buy the same. I was home on leave from the Marine Corps, and they told me about him living out there, that I was right. See, I was stationed on the island between the Oakland Bay Bridge there, right in the middle of it. There's an island called Yerma Buena, and they called it Treasure Island, but there's a big naval station there. And I was going to school. They sent me to school, electronic school, with the Navy. Of course, the Marines, I didn't even know it when I signed up for the Marines that the Marines is the ground force of the Navy. In fact, the Navy, the only reason I know that I was really part of the Navy was the fact that when I get my paycheck, it was the Navy that give me my paycheck, you know. But show you how dumb I was. I just no dumb country boy. I didn't know any difference. My goodness. I got a lot to say about that, because good Lord used me a lot of times to do stuff that the normal person, he spared them and give it to me because he knew it didn't make a darn to me. I remember one year I had about 7 or 8 jobs, you know. I'd work at it. I remember one of them I didn't last but 30 minutes, you know. And I didn't like what I signed up because I needed a job, you know. I didn't care what I did. But it turned out I didn't want to do that, so about 30 minutes later I walked off and I never did get a paycheck, you know. Anyway, listen, I'm getting kind of tired. I'm going to shut this off for a while and I'll come back and talk some more later, and they don't tell me what I may say today. You know, if you don't want to listen to this, well, that's your business. I don't really care. I'm going to put it down anyhow. Okay, I'll talk later.